did that matter that our guest said that? It didn't. No, just a procedural matter here. Before I introduce our guest, he said, "Is that the person singing?" And we don't put the person singing on for. Doesn't matter. Now, anyhow, this is not many people come back twice. Some people have been back. A couple of people have been back 3 times, and one person, Dr. Robbie Peterson, he's been back 4 times because he's gives us updates on the COVID hoax and farce and what this government did and how they locked us all down to within an inch of our lives for 3 or 4 years. Anyhow, he's come back twice, and this is the second time he's back, and he reminded me he was here of the great warding off of the great man Don Scott, who was sitting there at the day that Don snatched it from the podcast, threw the headphones down, knocked the microphone off its stand, dismantled a couple of pens while I was talking to him, ate some chips, and I said, "Don, could you go?" And he packed his bag up. Ken, not mentioned your name, I'm going to hang on. And he up and slunked out. I didn't slink out. He said, "Oh, fuck you," and out he went. And I only spoke to him just the day before yesterday for the first time since he vacated the premises. And this was in front of the great sporting writer and commentator and bon vivant man about town. This is the great Ken Piesse. Welcome back to You Cannot Be Serious, Ken.
Sam, my absolute pleasure. Donald was really badly behaved, and we've been mates for years.
Thank you for saying that. Well, I'm still classed on as a mate of mine, absolutely. I'm glad you said he was bad behaved.
He was. 1975, I'm an age intern. I'm a cadet journalist. I'm going down to Crib Point, Hawthorn Football Club have had a pre-season camp at Crib Point at Cerberus. And I was so nervous seeing all these stars, just literally out of Beaumaris High School. And Don came over and said, "Who are you and what do you want?" And I said, "I'm Ken Piesse from The Age. I'm working on sport. I'm down here to cover." "Oh, that's good. You better we'll introduce you around." And he was fantastic. He was like a father figure to me, and we've been mates ever since. Hence, I was really mad at him because we've been mates for so many years. He just walked out of our interview. But Sam, bless you, you kept on going, and it was a great hit. Talking about the bull, but this time we're talking about a different book.
Well, we are, Ken. We'll get on. Well, we'll just mention this is your latest outing. It's called Living the Dream. Ken Piesse, 60 years in cricket and football. Now, we will speak about the book, but I was staggered to read. This is about the 90th book you have written. That's got to be some sort of world record, isn't it?
There's no more published old fella in Australia anyway. No one's written 90 books or published or edited 90 books, Sammy. So this is cricket and footy, all my years of working at The Age, the Sporting Globe, all the great people that I've met along the way.
Well, we'll
mentors,
we'll get on to that. How could you possibly...
It's a huge number, yes.
How can you be so... I see Ricky Ponting said that Ken Piesse shares my opinion, this is Ricky Ponting saying this, that cricket is the greatest sport or game ever invented. Why is it the greatest game ever invented or played, or what is so intrinsically grand about cricket?
There's a science to it.
You think?
A science to it, Sam. And you have happy memories as a young buck, and my dad would take me to Hawthorn, to Glenferrie in the footy season, and to the MCG, the cricket, in the cricket season. And he'd go off with his mates into the cigar stand, have 1 or 2. No girls allowed in those days in the cigar stand.
No, women.
And I would score the games, and he would explain what was happening. Yeah. And I got to know people like Jack Potter and Bob Cowper and Paul Sheehan and all these stars. And when New South Wales came to town, Dougie Walters, all my heroes.
Yeah.
So there was an ambience to cricket, and I played it since I was 8 or 9, not terribly successfully. I've got some stats in the back of this book, but I've loved it all the way. And if anything, Sam, I love cricket and footy just as much now as I did back then.
Good God.
Crazy, isn't it?
So we were around when, you probably weren't around, when Alan McGilvray, they used to take the broadcast from England during the test, and they used to tap a bit of wood on the desk to make it sound as though they'd hit the ball.
That's
because it was a on delay, or you had to send over. Yeah, they didn't do it live. They had to send it down the line, and they had to reproduce it. And
well, you had.
do you remember all that?
These were. I don't remember.
No, you wouldn't. I don't.
This is
remember
1938,
that.
mind
right,
you. So neither of us do. But these were called the synthetic test commentaries.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 of the stations, the old 3UZ, 3DB, Charlie Vord, he was a comedian at the time in Melbourne and a big man on the campus. And so in between the breaks and when the telegrams broke down and they had to fill in, it's rain stop play, Charlie Vord would come on and sing a song. They were great entertainment all night.
Yeah. Where do you? So I looked up. It says you wrote a book called Cess.
Yeah.
About Sandpaper.
Yeah.
You could just keep writing books about individuals that have played the game. You could write 500 books, Ken.
Well,
who reads them? No, I don't mean that.
I know what you're saying.
I don't mean that. So if I was going through the airport and it said Ken Piesse, Cess, I think, holy shit, who is? Why would I want to read about Cess?
You'd relate to Sandpaper because he had 4 kids, 4 boys by 4 different women, 1 legitimately in marriage, 3 totally out of marriage. And it was amazing.
Well, that's why it'd be interesting.
And he blued with Bradman. Now, you would have liked that. There's a little bit of maverick in you, has been for a long time. And he told Bradman to go forth and multiply one day. And Bradman said, you're not going to take that to the umpire, and reported Cess. He wrote a letter of apology, never received. And so he went to England to play professionally. He, at the time, 1946, 47, he's on 500 quid, which is about $200,000 a year. He was the highest paid cricketer in all the world. What he wanted was to play Test cricket, but Bradman never let him.
Well, then I've underestimated Sandpaper. If I saw Cess in the on the newsstand at the airport, well, I would, now that I know that, I'd snap that up and
he was
read
the best
that.
player never to play for Australia.
Oh, that's
hence
extraordinary.
that was the kicker line.
Now, you mentioned Bradman. Just tell us the difference between having a chat to Don Bradman and Shane Warne. Just could you get 2 more polarised people who were probably number 1 and 2 in the world?
Well, they are. The best batsman of all is the Don, and the best bowler of all time, bless you, Dennis Lilly, is Shane Warne. Totally polar opposites. And Keith Miller, he used to live in Mornington, just down the road from me. He loved Don Bradman, the cricketer, hated the politics of Don Bradman. One day he bowled bouncers an Indian who kept on hitting him for 4, and Bradman said, come into the office tomorrow before play. And Miller said he felt like he was back at Melbourne High being called in to see the headmaster. He felt so uncomfortable. So they came from both sides, both different sides of the era. Warne and Miller was in tears one day when I went to see him, and he said, Don Bradman can ruin my life. I said, hang on a minute, Nugget, I'll get my recorder out. This is good. You know what I mean. You should, of course, Nugget, you should have been captain. You were the best. So should Warne. But you would have hated to do all the admin and all the conservative stuff that runs with cricket in this country. So I had him laughing within a few minutes. And still, there's nobody, Sam, even you, in the history of the world who can remember names or could remember names like Keith Miller.
Really?
And he and Susan, my wife, hadn't seen each other for maybe 15 years. And he said, hang on a minute, Ken, don't say. You're Susan, aren't you? Nugget, you are a genius. And he could do that with all the girls from going back for years and years.
He didn't forget Princess Margaret's name, did he?
He certainly did not. And word got back to Peg about their dalliance, and because he knew the back door at Buckingham Palace to go in. Oh, well, that's Keith for you. He's always had a way with the girls.
Fantastic. So of all we'll just get onto this book in a minute, but of all the people, who would you like to have interviewed most that you haven't, or written a book about, or?
Well, my favourite interview subject is dear to you.
Do you ever get knocked back from anyone that you ask to write books about, or do you do unauthorised biographies of them?
No. David Warne and I, last year's book, which went into reprint, incidentally, he was fine, but his manager wouldn't let me. These days you've got to deal with managers, Sam, rather than going man on man.
The last time you were in, Was that the book?
Yeah, that was
we
the
were
analyst called The Bull, the David Warne story.
That's right. That was the last. That was the last time you're in. We spoke about that.
And that was when Don walked out,
That's
that famous day.
Yeah.
But you know what? With Warne, when you do a biography, and I did the same with Gary Ablett, and Gary Ablett rang me on the Friday before this was senior, was due to print, and he said, Ken, I might like to get involved in your book. I said, well, Gary, I've already interviewed 60 different people, from Hafey and Ron Hovey, all the who's who of Geelong. And we went down, had a meeting with him. He wanted too much money for 1 hour's worth of talking. Warne was really interesting because the more and more I got into him, I started to warm to him. And there was a lady in the country, and I went up and did a launch in the country at Wagga Wagga, and her son loved Warne, and when Warne was suspended for doing the Sandpaper stuff, he wrote to Warne and he said, you know, he was only 9 years old, he said, you know, the only mistake in life you can make is not to learn from your mistakes. And Warne and he became buddies, and he championed him. And no matter where Warne is in the world, he rings this young Sam once a month and just asks him about himself. How's it going? How's it going with your sport? How's it going with school? How's it going, mum and dad? So there's a different side to Warne.
So why did you have to warm to Warne? Because of the Sandpaper scandal?
Yeah.
You thought
a traditionalist. I didn't like it. But people have been tampering with the ball for years, and Warne thought he could get away with it, and he didn't. But Australians, Sam, in cricket, we don't mind losing, but we hate it if we cheat. We hate it. It wasn't the thing. It wasn't the thing to do. But of course, all sorts of resignations from Darren Lehman, the coach, to all the 2 or 3 head honchos in Cricket Australia. Sponsors were pulling out. One guy who was putting in $6 million a year rang James Sutherland, and he said, unless he's suspended for life, all of those boys, Smith, Warne, Bancroft, I'm pulling out. And he did.
So I was over in Augusta in
Masters.
2018 in the Masters, and I was at a function, and Gary Player, I walked over and I had my mobile phone, and I said, Gary, I said, can I just have a chat to you on the phone? He said, yeah, sure. And we got onto golf, and then he said cricket. And he said, must have been, when did the Sandpaper thing happen?
About that time, 2018.
About that.
Yeah, early in the
and
year.
he said, he said that was. He said I lost a lot of respect for Australia and all that, and he loved Australia and coming out here. And I said, well, you would have loved Hansie Cronje then. That shut him up because Hansie. That was more.
He was taking money.
Rubbing the ball with sandpaper. Geez, did we blow that? I know you probably think that's the greatest. It's always tantamount to capital murder. That,
absolutely.
But is it? Yeah, what, tampering around with the ball?
Yeah, it is.
Ripping, just trying to prime the seam up with your fingernail, or putting...
this was blatant in front of 35 cameras. You know, with Gary Player, I interviewed him once too. He came out to Yarra Yarra, he did a clinic, and he was hitting 6 irons, 155 yards, 1 bounce, and his caddy, a black boy, was just taking the ball on the bounce.
A black boy.
A black boy, he was. But the absolute precision of Gary Player, and he was talking as he was swinging and hitting these beautiful 6 irons. I've never forgotten
There's that apocryphal story about Sam Snead, who was hitting balls similar from 180 yards, and he had these caddy. I don't know if he was a black boy, but he might have been a man of African
descent.
African American, and he said he was hitting him into a bag, and he'd sort of catch him on the first bounce, and he said, and he had to keep pretty sprightly because Sam kept hitting him from 180 metres, kept hitting him actually. So that's how accurate he was. From 180 yards, he was just kept hitting him.
He had a little slammer, and my mum had it. My mum is 100 years old and 9 months. We're going to have Christmas Day with her.
She's 100, is she?
100 years old.
Good
and
God.
She still remembers and getting this little slammer. And I try and play her a match play, and we've played golf together, Sammy.
Is that called a mashie? No. A little slammer.
Maybe a little slammer. It was like a 5-wood
that's
going
right.
back 50 years ago.
Yeah.
She was uncanny with this little slammer. And so whenever... sometimes when you get to 100, you're entitled to go off the track. I said, what about that little slammer? Oh, yes. What a beautiful club, she'd say.
Why did you answer who you'd like to have interviewed? It didn't? I mean, you can write a book about anyone, even if they say if they don't want to be part of it, you can do an unauthorised biography. But who did you want to speak to who either you didn't or died or knocked you back?
Well, I tried to interview Warwick Capper once. Now, he's not the person of all time I want to interview. Jared Healy, we're still good mates. He said, "You got to, like, we're getting all the publicity. Williams, Carroll, myself. Go and talk to Walker. He'll be right. I'll set you up." And Warwick Capper talked so fast like this, I could not understand even one word he had to say. He was worse than Bobby Davis and Kookaburra. He was amazingly bad. After 5 minutes, I had no notes. And I said to Jared, "It's just impossible." So, Warwick, all the very best. Keep on taking big mugs. And it's Capper!
Spot on.
And I was working with Michael Christian at Sport 927, and he would, and every time that South would play Collingwood, the Swans would play Collingwood, Chriso, you're going to be on the back page of the paper tomorrow. Back page of the paper, because you know what? Kappa! Over the top, taking the mark of the century.
Well, I know exactly what you mean. He says he's Netflix are doing some doco on him. I met with him at Warwick and his manager. Can't think of his manager's name. Can you remember his manager, Sue? Tony? Yeah.
He'll need to slow down, that's all.
No, I said, mate, you can't, you're going to be interviewed on the doco. He said, "Why?" And I said, "No one will understand." I said, you need me to interview you, Warwick. And I'll say something and you'll say, "Yeah, but I can't be." I said, "Hang on a minute. You won't take offence at me saying I've got to translate that, mate. You cannot speak like that. No one will understand a word you said." So he doesn't do it just with you, but he's out there, isn't he?
I think the Golden Bear would be unbelievable to talk to. He asked me about our 5 kids one day. Jackie Jr. was coming out and he said, "And Ken, you got family?" And it was amazing. Talk about the champion's champion.
Yeah.
He's the greatest golfer of all time before Tiger. Maybe still is. He's asking little Ken Piesse, the age journalist, about my kids.
So you might remember that Jack really nice. Came out to the Heritage that's named after him out in the Yarra Valley, and I interviewed Jack when he turned the first sod.
Yeah.
And I asked him one of the dumbest questions. He said, I said, "This is not a sandbelt course, Jack, as opposed to all the ones at Royal Melbourne and Metropolitan." I said, "What are you going to do about that? Because it retains water." And he said, "Well, we're going to make it a sandbelt course." I said, "Are you? How are you going to do that?" He said, "We're going to put sand on it." And I thought he was joking. And he said, "No, we're going to put a foot of sand over the whole course." I said, I didn't ask him how that made it a sandbelt course, but so I spoke to the great Jack Nicklaus, who. So you primarily deal with football, cricketers, and football. What other sports? If you had a crack at it, aren't you interested?
I love golf, and I played in a pro-am with Bob Shaw. I was his partner in a pro-am. And he said that, or his caddy said, the previous week there was a 4 handicapper in Sydney. He was so nervous it took him 16 holes to actually get one on the dance floor. Yeah. And he was, but no one has hit a 1-iron
like Bob Shaw.
Oh, unbelievable! He was strong, like not that tall. He'd play maybe on the wouldn't play on a wing because it wouldn't be quick enough. But 5'10", but he hit a 1-iron out of sight. The only other guy would be Trevor Henley, going back years ago, a Melbourneian, and he used to hit 2 irons similarly. And he was a great pennant player, Trevor Henley, going back. Yeah,
I remember all those people. So do you ever get any, so the people that you write books about, do you get feedback from them or their managers, or do they say, you shouldn't have said this, or do you...
It's all been pretty good. I think Gary Ablett Senior would have liked to have...
I'm sorry, I'm not... Yeah. So Gary, I speak to Gary quite often.
Yeah.
He sends me... he sends me... texts from the Bible, and he sends me messages from our Saviour, and I respond. I'm a believer, and I think he likes that I'm a believer, and he is an extraordinary person. I've had some very sensible conversations with Gary, and I've had some ones that have gobsmacked me. He's been in this very studio here. I've asked him 100 times, mate, could I just speak to you about not what you think I'd like to speak to you about, just you? And he says, yes, we'll do that one. He'll never do it. He says, we'll do that someday.
He-
And
he-
I hope he's listening to this. And I said, I'll drive down and we'll do it on the phone. I said, we'll drive around in the K. Loves Mustangs. I
Yeah.
said, we'll drive around the Mustang. We'll have a chat.
That's
No,
cool.
he'll never do it.
He was an amazing footballer, like down at Druin. Like even as a 14, 15-year-old, there was a Harry Beitzel footy clinic that Bobby Skilton was at, and the bus from Druin arrived. I think they were at Warragul, and somebody tapped Bobby on the shoulder and said, "I see that last kid getting off the bus. That's the youngest of the Ablets. He's going to be the best of them." And at the time, Jeff Ablett had played in 2 premierships at Hawthorn. You had Kevin, you had the other brothers. And little Gary Ablett got up Skilton's end and literally he started to outmark him, kick left and right foot as further than the Bobby Skilton. He's aged 14 and 15. And Bobby Skilton say, "Hey, you," to Gary. "What, me? Yeah. Get up the other end." "Why?" "I want to get a kick," he said. "I want to get a kick." Yeah.
He is, I think, the true meaning of the word, an enigma. He is extraordinary, extraordinary person.
Yeah.
Now, so Ken, I see that you are seconded to go on cruises and speak to people on the P&O line.
Yes, I am.
Do you know what P&O means?
Phew, I should know that.
You should
shouldn't
know,
I?
seeing as you're working for them.
Yeah, I should know that. Luckily, they've been taken over by Carnival, and I know what Carnival do.
Yeah, no.
So we're going to New Zealand in the new year for New Year's
So
Eve.
you get requested by P&O
Yeah,
or
to tell my
Carnival now
stories.
to go over
Yeah.
and speak to the assembled gathering at functions while the boat's rocking and rolling through the Bass Strait and the Tasman Sea and all the other places.
We have so much fun.
And what do you
So I do 6 or 7 presentations. One's a Bradman, one's a Warne. Favourite footy heroes, favourite cricket heroes. Might be this one. We're going to do Living the Dream, a little bit of my story. But I'm able to get away and tell stories about all sorts of different people, like Bobby Davis, our all-time favourite together, you and I. Every time I go down Geelong, I'd go down and visit Bobby and Margaret in Newtown. I'd go and see the twins. You've got to go and see the twins. And I'd go and see Redder in these antique shop, Ian Redpath.
Well, 4 of those people you mentioned are not with us any longer. Ian's not with us any longer. One of the twins,
one of the twin
I think,
Stewart's
is
gone,
not
I think.
with us, and Bobby, of course, is not
Yeah.
with us.
But he was so happy, and
He was.
Margaret would say, "Ask him about the recruiting, Ken, because he loved recruiting." "I know, Marg, I know." And he'd talk about one day though going up to get a kid called Sharrick.
Yeah, that's right.
from Tulibuck, who was a seriously good player as a teenager, and they stopped off at Horsham on the way, and Bobby's having kick to kick with and they were in their 4 LTDs, he and Leo O'Brien.
That's it.
And Bobby didn't much like this kid he was kicking with, but out of the corner of his eye, there was this fat kid, an 18-year-old, who was kicking these huge torpedoes. "Oh, who's that there?" "Oh, kid called Wade, Doug Wade. He's pretty fat and
He used to call him Puddin'.
pretty lazy. We don't think he'll amount to anything." So by the time 17-year-old Doug Wade had walked around to 27 McPherson Street, Horsham, bouncing a ball, Bobby's already around there, and Mrs. Wade, the mum, is already asking, "Would you like another party pie, Bobby?" "Don't mind if I do." He could talk underwater with a mouthful of bubbles.
He'd call him Doug. He called him the fat man.
Yeah.
Or Puddin'.
Yeah.
He said, "Kick it to the fat man.
Yeah.
He'll do the rest."
Yeah,
God,
exactly.
No,
Like Tommy Hafey coaching Richmond, he'd try and do a little bit like Kennedy's Commandos, leave it all open for Hudson. Just kick it long and get out of Royce's way. The great Royce Hart.
And of course, his great recruiting coup was going over and bringing Polly back.
Wasn't that something? He said to Leo.
Did you ever speak to Polly?
Yeah, because I was working.
Have you done a book on Polly?
I haven't done, but Stephen Hawke, Bob Hawke's son, did, and
I
it's
know.
very, very, very good. Very good.
I was interviewed by Stephen Hawke about Polly,
So with those books that I do, I like to write about people that haven't been written about.
Yep, no, fair
Because
enough.
then you've got a captive audience. But very funny, after the 61 Australian Championships, and for those that don't remember, Victoria used to play South Australia, Western Australia, Tassie. It used to all be fantastic. Polly got BOG in most of the games.
Yep.
And so Bobby, after the 61 championships, he's talking to Leo. "Leo, what do we need? What do we need? We think we're just one player. I need a ruckman. Who's around, Leo? Who's around?" He'd say to Leo O'Brien. "Well, there's a guy called Curly in Adelaide. But he hates Victorians. Victorians. And there's another guy called Graham Farmer. Yeah, Graham Polly Farmer. Get him on the phone. Get him on. Well, I haven't got his contact, so you haven't got his phone. Just ring the Perth Exchange. They'll find. Yeah. And, of course, within 5 minutes, Graham Farmer's on the phone. Oh, it's Graham Farmer here, Bob. This is a great honour. Thank you so much.
Nice.
And Bobby said, we want you to come and play at Geelong. You're going to win us the premiership. Oh, no, I couldn't possibly do that, Bob. Like, I'm married. I've got a lovely job here. Everything's going really nicely. Well, what about coming on the trip away? Come on the trip away next week. We're going to the Gold Coast. Oh, yes, I could do that, Bob. And so they wined and dined for the great Polly Farmer for a week. What do you think of us, Paul? What do you think of us? Well, it's all very nice, but Bob, I'm going to need a signing on fee. I'm going to need a job. I'm going to need a car.
They gave him £2,000.
Yes.
I think they did.
Yes, but the big one, as you said to me...
Just to sign him?
Yes. The big one, I put it in Living the Dream, was Alex Popescu, his patron. I think East Fremantle asked something like £30,000, some amazing figure. And I don't know what that's worth now, but it's worth a lot of money.
£30,000 is worth, like, buy a suburb for £30,000 in the early 60s.
And Alex signed the cheque, and of course Polly came, and he played the best first 4 games in the history of anybody playing games, hurt his knee, hobbled through to round 11, broke down. You didn't win the flag that year. You got through the preliminary final. The fat man, there was a controversial free kick with Peter Barry, wasn't there?
Yeah, held
but
his
then,
shorts.
of course...
Jack Irving said, you held his shorts back, Doug. The fat man said, how could I do that? I was leading out. He said, you did. That was fantastic.
So you won in 63, and you should have won in 67, but Freddie Swift marking 4 rows back at the punt road end. They were great teams. You know, there was a player in those Geelong lists in those days, Eddie Milai.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Now, I rucked against Eddie Milai. Bo Morris versus Chadson grand final at Jack Barker Oval in Cheltenham, and it came to the last bounce. We'd shocked them, and suddenly they kicked 3 in time on, and there was 2 points difference. Bo Morris, South East Suburban grand final, and I'm rucking against Eddie, who's 36, and I'm 22, 23.
What year?
This is 77. It's 1977.
Played with Eddie. I left school. I didn't leave school. I played the last 3 reserves games. Bob Davis came out, gave me Polly Farmer's training jumper to come and play the last 3 reserves games in 63 from school. And I played in the reserves grand final in 63 where the seniors won, and I played with Eddie Milai. He was in the side. He drove a white MG convertible. Yeah,
he was a lovely man, but not on the football field, not playing for Chadstone. So early in the year, he'd banged me badly. I ran into his fist with my chin, and it came to the last bounce, 2 points difference, and everything was on the line. If he got the knockout, given the bounce and the players, if he got the knockout, we were gone. Bo Morris would have lost it. But the bounce went up, but it hovered over Eddie, and I was able to get an extra little bit of a jump, got the knockout to my little mate David Nicholson, who hit the leading centre half forward Peter Linton, kicked the goal, winning goal, and we won it. But he was unlucky because the ball landed on his side. If it had been right in the middle, with a good bouncer, I would have been Cactus.
Now, the only person Bob didn't have any success with, I know they fought very hard to get the great Barry Robram over from South Australia, but Barry wouldn't come for under any circumstances.
And there was a guy called Ian Morgan, maybe from Rapanyip, who was...
You got me there.
Really? Wow, that's something.
Yep, no.
So he was a dairy farmer's son, and he kicked hundreds of goals, like Ellen LaFontaine, the old Melbourne, hundreds of thousands. And Bobby wanted him to come and play in the forward line, but his dad wouldn't let Ian Morgan wouldn't come because he needed to work on the farm. He was a star. He was in one of my books, Legends of the Country Footy, that sort of stuff.
So that was one of your books?
Yeah.
Now, you didn't tell... I'm going to tell you should know what P&O means in case they
yes,
employ
please.
you again.
Yeah,
it means
thank you.
Many people think it's Pacific and Orient, but it's Peninsula and Orient.
I wouldn't have got that. I got the Orient. I wouldn't have got Peninsula.
No, it's Peninsula. So there you are. So when the P&O get in touch with you, you say, yep, know the history of Peninsula and Orient. That'll...
So there's this huge stage. I'm in the marquee, as Tony Gregg would say.
Yeah, and the marquee. That's it.
And there's room for 400. But
it's on the ship.
Yeah. But there's about 150 come, and I do my footy ones, and I've always got stories about Doc Baldock and Bobby. Gerard Healy, who was very funny. There was a year he won the Brownlow, might have been 84, and he played the best 11 games anyone in the history has played. But he broke down with osteopubis, and when he went out to Footscray, he didn't get a kick, and he said to Lisa, his wife now, wife of 3 kids, he said, I need something. I might even need a corset. Can you go and choose one for me? I can't do that. It's very personal. You've got to be able to do it yourself. So after not getting a kick the following week as well, Jared's gone into the Martin Street mall, went to the nearest corset designer, and he's picked out a lovely bone number, taken it up to the counter, and the girl said to him, would you like a lovely matching bra to go with that too, sir? So that was really cool. I like that. So I use that on board. Ken
Piesse was speaking to his new book out called Living the Dream. Now, Living the Dream, is this your life story?
Yeah.
This is
memoir.
this is your autobiography.
My autobiography. Don doesn't know the difference between a biography and auto.
No, I just had to just check myself there.
That's my memoirs.
Is it?
Yeah. I reckon you would make a good book. And I've talked to you countlessly over the years about this.
Yeah, no, I've had a few people ask me about that. I'm a bit different to you, Ken. I would have to say the things that have...
That's what Yabby Jean said to me too, because I said to Yabby, he was one I wanted to write, and we were great mates. I go and visit Yabby Jeans, Alan Jeans. I said, why are you called Yabby? He says, I'm a big brother. He was Lobby. He was very red-faced. He was just the lobster. And who's that over there? Oh, just a little Yabby.
That's good.
So that was pretty cool. And he said, but I'd have to tell too many truths. I'd have to talk about so-and-so dressing up, have to talk about Big Carl speeding down Hampton Street and some of the other shenanigans.
I had lunch with Big Carl last week.
Nice. What a hero he was for all the young boys in the 60s. A little bit like Warne with the cricket coming through now. They idolised him. We all did.
Just a bit jumpy. He's got a case coming up in April, and he thinks that mightn't get to court. So I hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen him since he belted the living suitcase out of me back in the 60s, maybe the early 70s. And man, I hardly recognised him.
He was a hard man. I was working at The Age, and I'd arranged to meet him at 4:30 at Dendy Park for pre-season training. He arrived right on 5. He looked at me in my suit. He said, I haven't got time for you now. I haven't got time. Unless you want to run with me, a warm-up lap. And so here's Ken Piesse running a half a lap at Dendy Street with Big Carl. And he stopped and he said, you're a mate of Trevor Barker's, aren't you? He said, that's right, yeah. Trevor told me. What do you want to know? And he was terrific.
Was he?
Yeah, he was terrific. Yeah. Trevor would play fullback, and people would remember Trevor. Like, had he lived, it's been 40 years since Trevor's gone. 40 years? 39 he died, so 30 years. And he would play fullback, and he would just have to nod at Carl because the full forward would try and rough him up. Trevor Barker had this long flowing hair, took beautiful marks. He was the ambassador for the game. Drove a little hotted up Datsun. That was the most wild thing about Trevor, other than his black book, Sam, with I say probably rivaled yours.
Probably rivaled Shane's. It wouldn't have rivaled Shane's, but it'd be the next pecking order down from Shane's.
So Trevor just had to look at Dittrich and point, and suddenly the bloke would go bang down. He would be dead within 5 minutes. His opponent.
How it's changed.
He's a lethal man, Carl. Sorry, Carl.
So are your do you ever critique the game? Do you ever do you ever talk about how the game should be better or can be better, or do you not get into the controversy of what you write about, Ken?
Anything about the cricket, Sam, I like. They're talking about 4-day test matches, which I would not be in favour of. Gilchrist is talking about Michael Vaughan, but he's a Yorkshireman, so it doesn't count. Yes. But we used to have timeless test matches. There was one test that went for about 8 days in the days of Bradman, because they had these, at the MCG, they had a horse, a Clydesdale horse, might have been a Shire, and called Dolly, and had these big boots on, and had this roller, and she would go up and down, this big white wicket was as wide as the Port Melbourne wicket. I played a lot of cricket at Port Melbourne with all the footballers, Anderson and Tinsley and Big Stretch Anderson. Had so much fun, but the wicket was so big and white and wide.
Well, why wouldn't 4 day? Is this just for the commercial interest of keeping the public entertained for 4 days? They get a bit bored after 5 days when it's going nowhere. Is that right?
Well, you can have some great 5-day finishes. We were at Edgbaston, the famous day where Kasparovich was caught off the glove, which wasn't holding the bat, should have been given not out. but this was my 50th birthday at the time, and Lee played a big square drive. I thought, that's it. And I'd put on 50 quid with the bookmakers at the back of the tents there, Ladbrokes, and we were going to have a big 50th party. We did anyway, but in the end, Australia lost by 2 runs. But that was a 5th day finish. And so nothing wrong with 5-day test cricket. But all the white ball stuff, Sam, the 2020, the 50-50 stuff, it enhances what Test cricket is about.
So you're okay with that, are you? As a purist.
Yeah. No, cricket is played like England play cricket the right way. They go in and get after it. There's a boy called Harry Brook that's made 1,000 calendar year runs. He's the new #1 batsman in the world. So he's a star.
I'm not a cricket enthusiast so much. I like to watch it just because Australia play. I'm not an aficionado of it, but I used to go with the late Nigel Murch.
Yes.
And we used to... has there ever been any better adrenaline feeling watching Dennis Lilly and Jeff Thompson open on Boxing Day at the MCG? As I say, that used to get the hair standing on the back. And I'm not even really... I used to just go with Nigel because he was besotted by it, and he was a good friend of mine, the late Nigel Murch. So has there ever been any better opening pair than those two, or have I got that a bit jaundiced?
No, amazing theatre with those two, and I was with my mates who were at Sydney in that same series, 74-75, and you had the big black clouds coming in from Randwick. The light was bad.
Yes.
And John Edrich, the doughty, he was one you'd bat for your life. He'd been hit first ball under the ribs. Lily broke his ribs. Tomo's bowling these bounces, and the crowd on the hill are yelling, kill, kill. Like it was amazing theatre, but they were fierce. Rick Charlesworth, the great hockey player, was taking guard one day against Tomo, a local boy, and the wicketkeeper... Who are you? I can't see you. He was 50 yards back, the wicketkeeper.
They were standing, they're almost standing, not down on the boundary, but that's a bit...
Can I Nigel Murch, you mentioned Nigel. I'd go in and see him once every couple of weeks. A lovely boy. I'd always bring back a cricket tie from some of our cricket tours. Susan and I take cricket tours away. So we walked in, 75th birthday, as I didn't realise, and he said, "Where's your grog?" I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm 75 today. What am I going to drink?" "Oh, hang on, I'll go down to the concourse and get some for you." No, I've got plenty here, mate. Come in. And he and his mates started to tell stories. And of course, it got on to his stint at Northants. And he said, well, I was up on the high street, and there was this girl...
Where?
On the high street in Northants. Northants. He played 1 year professional there. And so Nigel being... Northants, Northamptonshire.
Oh, yes. Good on you.
Yeah. And so he's played his game of cricket, but Nigel being Nigel with that big tan and the long hair, he was out on the prowl. And there was a very pretty singer called Mary Black who was singing this particular night. And Nigel said to her, "Would you care to dance?" And she said yes. And then after her last bracket, "Would you care to come home with me?" "Yes," she said. And Mary Black became Dusty Springfield.
Oh, really?
You don't have to say you love me, just be close at hand. And hence beginning 3 months of torrid lovemaking. Are we allowed to say that?
We've called the bloke that caught Gary Player's balls the black boy, so I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can say lovemaking.
And so after 3 months, apparently Dusty started to bat for the other side. And Nigel said to me on his 75th birthday, "And it had nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. I was sensational in the cot," he said.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you got to love that. He was such a dear man.
So is your opinion... your opinion sought after? But so James Sutherland, how was he going? He oversaw the worst Australian Open golf thing.
Yes.
What a disgrace that was.
The girls and the boys, and I'm sorry, girls, you need your separate tournament.
And the disabled.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah.
Play better than I've ever played. The disabled, but fancy devaluing your Australian Open by having a concoction of people you didn't know who was playing who and what course they were on.
It was your grand final, was the test match, and suddenly you're watching at 3 o'clock and it's really starting to get exciting and you love the build-up, and suddenly you go to the Sheilas. Sorry, girls.
No, that's fantastic. So he didn't... James, I went to, his father taught me at school, Ivan.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what James is doing, overseeing sport.
He's at Sandringham. They've got a great setup there. But he did tell me after that, the Watergate of cricket with the Sandpaper stuff, and he said, in the first Test match, Warner's mucking around with the ball, and A.B. de Villiers said to him, you're doing something to the ball. And Warner said, are you accusing me of cheating, A.B.? I don't know, but you're doing something to the ball. And in that Test match, Nathan Lyon, dropped the ball on a prostrate A.B. de Villiers who was being run out. And Sutherland rang Steve Smith, the captain of Australia, that night, absolutely furious. It was such a bad look. They want cricket to be the greatest game of all time. And Steve Smith said to him, we've just run out the greatest batsman in the world. He, Lyon, can do what he likes. And James said to me, well, if that's your captain, the bad egg at the top, how are the rest going to behave? And, of course, Sandpaper was to follow.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So James has done so many great things for cricket with the women's Big Bash League, night cricket. In January, we're going to have a women's test match, Australia v England, at the MCG, the first ever day-night test match. It's fantastic. This is all on James,
Yes.
Yeah, on the back of his brilliant pioneering work.
Yeah, so that's going to be huge, is it?
It's going to be it's going to be the women's cricket's fantastic, Sam.
I'm sure it is. I don't watch it, but I don't watch the AFL.
The women's footy, for example. They're going to get better. But a lot of them can't kick.
Have you written a book on any woman?
No.
A woman?
No.
Female player?
No, I haven't.
Well,
I haven't.
That could be your next.
Sophie Molyneux will be the next. She's a country girl from Bairnsdale. She might be the next captain of Australia women's team. One day we might even do a book. You never know. She's a terrific personality and a great captain. Bowls left arm finger spin and bats left hand beautifully.
I've never met anyone so enthusiastic about the vocation and the
well, this is
the moment they're in, mate. You're a breath of fresh air.
This is what people talk. Jared Healy with the bra and so it was very funny. Tommy Hayford, they won 5 games in a row. Sydney, they've got all these superstars, but in the second half of one game, of the 5th winning game, they all fell in a heap. They still just won the game, and Tommy's yelling at him. He said, guess what? Next week we're playing the Tigers. We're down in Melbourne. We're playing Richmond. They're going to be coming at you. And if you're so complacent here, Carroll, they reckon you're going to be the All-Australian centre back. You got no chance. Williams, the ball magnet. Can you find the ball? Healy, he's just paying out on all these guys. And so at halftime, Richmond have jumped them. They're 5 goals ahead in round 6. And Healy and Nigel are the last 2 people off. And Tommy's already following. He's gone down to the ground level, already haranguing them as they're walking up. And Jared had played at Melbourne, and he said to Merv, let's just whip in here. We don't want to hear what Tommy's got to say. Let's whip in here. Turned on that it was in the sauna. It was on full bore. And they're listening to Tommy haranguing all these guys. He just took a breath and just went out to a little ante-room at the back. And Healy and Nagel were sweating profusely. Here's our chance. And they quickly joined the boys. And Hafey started again. And look at you all. The only 2 blokes that are sweating are Healy and Nagel, he said. So I use that on P&O too.
All right. So now finally, Kenny, you're living in your era there. I know this is not a visual medium. Well, it is.
Well, we hope it
is a visual medium.
Yeah.
Why did I say that?
Yeah.
So let's just see. We can see that on the camera there. Yeah. This is that right? So how's he got to show that better? That's all right. So that's got the loved ones. You've got
Jerry Humphreys out front.
Yeah. So that was a favourite group of yours.
Absolutely,
was it?
And you should know who they are. Like you only know the easy beats.
The easy beats. Now here's a question for you.
Yes.
What is the largest selling Australian record ever?
Single?
Yes.
It's got to be Friday on your mind, doesn't it?
And that's the second largest.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, what's the largest?
Shut up, your face.
Joe
Dolce.
Wow.
Yep. We spoke to Joe here last week.
Oh, so
And
good.
it's sold 450,000 or something. And next is the Easy Beats, Friday on Your Mind, 266 or something. I don't know.
Well, the loved ones, they did Ever Loving Man. And
Yeah, they did too.
They did some beautiful song. Oh, baby, please no more. Oh, baby, no more. It's Jerry Humphries could sing, I can't.
No, yeah, that is true. You cannot, Ken. Well, Ken, look, it's always fantastic to speak to you.
Will you have me again? Can I do a third?
Well, you have to write another book.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right. Okay. That's a chance.
That was Suri, because I said
Suri.
Because I said Sue. What happened then? Why did Suri say, what do I want?
Sam, it's
She
been my
heard my
pleasure
voice.
to be here. Thanks so much.
All right, so it's called Living the Dream, and 60 years in cricket and football. It's what? Well, when
And people can get it. This is
There
the
it is.
hardback Sam's
Living the-
got.
This is
And I'll send it out to all the podcast listeners and viewers, etc., post-free for Christmas. So just send me an email to Ken Piesse. You'll find me, cricketbooks.com.au.
Ken Piesse, P-I-E-E-C-E.
Almost.
P-I-E.
S-S-E. Peace.
Fancy speaking to someone who don't know how to spell their name. P-I-E-S-S-E. Ken Piesse. He'll send it out post-free. There's a Christmas...
It's a beauty.
What a thing to finish on. I forgot it was the Yuletide coming up, but this would be the perfect Christmas gift. Kenny, thank you so much for coming in, and I'm sure we'll probably do this again. You might bring Don in next time.
I'd
we
like
can have
that.
a reunion.
I'd like
You
that.
can finish the interview you were chatting to him about. All
We'd
the
like
best,
that.
my friend. Thank you
Cheers.
so much.
Thanks, Sam.